Hello, Anutza. It's so nice to have you on the show today. How are you doing?
I'm good, Elijah. How are you?
I am doing quite fine, and thank you so very much for being here. You see, I truly appreciate you. And you see, Anutza, oftentimes I love to thank my guests for two things. And I do this so often to the point where it has become my anthem. So, firstly, I want to say thank you so very much, Anutza, for investing in yourself. You see, you are on this platform right now because you did invest that in yourself. And oftentimes, Anutza, I love to make reference to the amazing mango tree. Let's say some couple of months back, yeah, I was on a particular road, and just by the roadside, Anutza, there was this very tall, unattractive mango tree. And I use the word unattractive because the mango tree's got no mangoes on it. And the leaves, they were all dry. So I just walked past it and I went my way. But you see, I'm not sad. Just recently, I was on that same road. And this time around, mm,
Interesting.
ripe mangoes. It was such a lovely experience that day. And I was so, so excited. Here is my point. The fact that you dedicated your time, energy, and resources to becoming the amazing Anutsa that you are today, that alone has made it impossible for me to skip you. And that's why you got the request from me to be on the show because I was attracted to the fruit of all that you're doing, your philosophies, your insight, your work, the impact your work is having, and now you are offering your solution, Anutsa. This stuff's so beautiful. So I've got to say thank you so very much for doing that to yourself. And secondly, thank you for saying yes to the invite. Because if you had said nope, there was nothing Elisha could do about it. Thanks so much, Anita.
It's such a pleasure. And thank you for that lovely story about one of my favorite fruits.
Awesome!
I appreciate the analogy and I see where you're going with this.
Beautiful. Thank you. I like it when people like mangoes. Thank you. Awesome. So let's get right into it. And you see, I am quite excited to have you on the show today for a few reasons. Firstly, my interest in knowledge seeking. I believe in order for one to transition from a terrible situation to that of a beautiful one, I believe it takes the application of knowledge, quality information, and not just knowledge alone, but the application of it. And you see, ever since I discovered that light in the Hebrew means knowledge and darkness ignorance, I've been so keen to knowledge seeking. Why? Because I do not want to remain in the dark. So that's going to make our conversation today very important to me and even to the listeners. And the second reason why I'm excited to have the incredible Anutza on the show is for the sake of the audience. You see, we live in an age where information is as abundant as grains of sand. We've got lots of information flying out there. So those folks trust me for quality, your plan, and very important information, of which I am totally convinced and legit that our conversation is going to be insightful, impactful. So, for that reason, let's get started with your introduction. Talk to us about your personal or your professional journey, because right now we are so curious. We want to know how Anutza got here. And afterwards, I've gotten some beautiful questions for you. Okay, Anutza, over to you.
Oh, thank you, Elijah. That's lovely. So, my work in the personal development realm for the past almost 22 years, I think, um, has definitely been birthed through this desire for constant learning. When I was younger, when I was younger, I didn't get what we might call a traditional childhood, so to speak. And I didn't get to finish high school, like the average teenager would. And so those experiences that led me through life have always been this desire to continue my education. And starting that in my 30s really allowed me to not only become more educated, but like, as you said, become more light in the world and make better decisions and continue through the process of growth, personal growth. And I continue through this process today as I'm completing my master's, working on my master's and, for licensing and for clinical psychology and counseling. So I love the fact that I've been able to coach and become certified in these areas for so long that I've been working with not only anger management clients, hypnotherapy clients, aspects of life purpose and career development. So it's been a complete honor and such a pleasure to work with so many people in this field. And I love most when people are really interested in their own growth, in their own development, and really helping themselves through their own conversations, through their own trauma, through their own challenges, because no one can do the work for you, Elijah. It's really up to the individual who wants to make that effort to what we call take on the journey of personal growth. So I obviously, have been in love with my career because of the rewards. It's such a rewarding aspect of being able to guide and assist human nature through the process of seeing things differently in order to help us become more of who we are, empowered within ourselves, so that we're not constantly looking out to others. I think others are excellent for guidance and motivation, but the work has to be done through us individually, personal, and heartfelt.
The world has to be done through us individually, personally, and heartfelt. I got that. And thank you for all that you're doing, Anutza. So, with this beautiful work that you're doing, how has the journey been so far? You mentioned that you love your work because of the reward. So, how has the journey been so far?
So the journey hasn't been without trials or tribulations, so to
Okay.
speak, because I think even when people come to me for growth and development through coaching, there is a natural resistance to shifting dynamics that we've been using and relying on our entire life. So even for myself, when we talk about my personal journey, I came to the work of anger management because I was in a very toxic and abusive relationship and I needed to learn the skills. And it was something that I was doing for my career because it was brought to my attention through a mentor that anger management was an actual thing because I thought they were kidding, right? I didn't understand that it was an actual skill and something that you could learn to improve your life. When I took on the concept and the work of anger management for my own life, it shifted how I thought about myself and how and why I put myself into relationships or situations or careers and professional relationships that I do, why I do those things. What are the natural components of me that require or look for those opportunities or experiences, right? So anger management, let's stick to that first because we could talk about a couple other things. But when we're talking about the work that I've been doing, anger management is made up of three specific skill sets: stress management, emotional intelligence, and interpersonal communication. When we can learn to manage our body's emotions, the stress that we feel, the chronic stress that we endure in this really fast-paced world, we take on that opportunity to be at one with ourselves and be in connection and recognize where we hold tension or how we're expressing ourselves, because our ability to manage stress is so one with our nervous system and our ability to express ourselves. So we can't talk about anger management from a point of communication if our frontal lobe is shut down, if we're in fight or flight, because it's not the same conversation. So I think that understanding concepts, for me at least, that the importance of stress management, regulating the nervous system, and how it affects our ability to use emotional intelligence and then communicate from that space. So there's like a pecking order, so to speak. There's this foundational management of ourselves and our thoughts around stress management and our bodies. And then we can look at perspectives from another person's point of view or take the opportunity to step into someone else's shoes and see that conversation or experience from both points and then communicate from that perspective. But first, I learned to communicate with myself because so many times I see that I would communicate with others first without really understanding what it was that I needed to stand for and take responsibility for in that experience. So part of this journey has been really holding myself accountable
Mhm.
for the types of relationships and people and conversations that I tend to get myself into, right? And I think that that's a part of growth when we look at how we approach personal development or overcoming trauma and experiences. We have to see the nature of us that called in that experience or that person or even that job and how it was supposed to fill something for us that we were not filling for ourselves first. Does that resonate with you,
Yeah, I
Elijah?
tell you, and that was a great response. Taking accountability yourself, I got that. So, still on the subject of anger, Anutza, what myths about anger keep people stuck in toxic relationships?
Okay. What needs or what is it about
Yeah, like,
people that stay stuck in toxic
yeah,
relationships, right?
right.
So when you think about that, do you have a person that you've ever met or the person that you think of that comes to mind when you think of the fact that toxic relationships, like they keep getting themselves into the same type of relationship or the same type of experience?
Yeah, yeah. There is someone that comes to mind.
Right, right.
Right.
And sometimes it's ourselves. Sometimes we can think of someone else, and sometimes it's harder to think of the fact that it's really, well, maybe it does come easy to us that we recognize that we seem to end up with the same person, just a different name, different face, right? The same character in the roles of our lives. And when we talk about toxic relationships, what is it that gets us into those toxic relationships? It's our inability to recognize the needs that we have for ourselves that we're looking for other people to fill. And a lot of times people are willing and able to play that role for a certain amount of time, but they're unable to endure that. They can't keep that going because it's not their responsibility, right? And a lot of times we get into toxic relationships because we emote, we impose these expectations upon our partners or our work or whatever it may be to fill these certain voids for us in our lives instead of taking that time. And I know that it's difficult work because I've done it. I've been there and it's challenging to admit when you're responsible for the harm that you've been imposing on yourself by choosing the wrong partner, by choosing the wrong workplace, because it wasn't in alignment. So when we look at toxicity, we want to recognize what level of toxicity are we talking about? What is it that it's fulfilling for us? Because there was obviously a need that we were trying to fill that we engaged that person or place for, instead of looking at how we're responsible for taking on that experience for ourselves. And that's typically how we get ourselves into these toxic relationships. And I can speak for that within my own life, where I may have been looking for a partner who could fulfill this concept, right? This concept that we create in our cultures around the other person completes you, or, you're supposed to do this with a partner, instead of recognizing the things that I can do for myself, instead of looking at experiences and relationships from a position of empowerment instead of handing out our power and giving our power away. Does that sound like what you were asking
Yeah,
as far as how we get into toxic relationships?
right,
Can you see how if we put our responsibilities for ourselves in someone else's hands, right? They're incapable of managing or even meeting these expectations most of the time. And that's how things get messy because there's expectations that are not being met by one person. And then there's resentment. And then people start to act differently and behave differently in relationships. And that's when sometimes we see the most damaging and hurtful parts of other people. If you get into a relationship, a personal relationship, even a professional relationship of any kind, and you impose these expectations upon them and you're giving them this power, it could really take a toll or damage your
right.
life. And then we turn around and blame those situations or people as opposed to recognizing what is it that I need to change so that I never impose that responsibility on anyone else besides myself.
Mm, well said, and I got that, and that's so true. So we have two more to go on it. So
Okay.
I want us to understand your approach even more. So who are your ideal clients, and how do you help them?
So an ideal client is sometimes, sadly, I like to say because it's true, they have gotten to the point in their relationship where they can't take anymore and they need change and it has to happen right away. So sadly, people wait until the last minute or until they can't take it anymore to come into this type of work. So that's one form of an ideal client because they need relief and they're looking for someone who has decades of experience in working with people that you can see, the facilitator can see, the coach can see where the gaps are and how to approach them in a way that doesn't create more stress or fight or flight on the system, helping them understand what's going to happen, what's happened, how to expect things to show up. And I think that the person that is ideal for this work is really someone who is open and they are willing to take on and do the hard work because it is hard work. There is no doubt about it. This is challenging stuff. You know, even changing toothpaste is hard for some people. We just resist change. And it's interesting how we want better for ourselves, but we fight for our own limitations most of the time in relationships. And I'm talking about personal and professional relationships.
Right, right. And that's so true. So to bring this to an end, and what would you like to leave the audience with, like a final thought? And to those folks who would like to reach out to you, learn more about the wonderful stuff you're doing, ask you questions, or maybe they require your service. How can that be possible?
Sure. So you gave me a couple of questions there. Which one would you like first?
Okay, so sorry, what would you like to leave the audience with, like a final thought?
Great. So I would like to leave the audience with this question. I'd like you to ask yourself, what is it that you would do for yourself, or what is it that you would have someone do for you, right? What is it that you get into a relationship for? If you're getting into a relationship for a level of love and expectations, are you first giving that to
Yes,
yourself? So you're not coming from a deficit, and are you showing up to your relationships as fulfilled as you possibly can be within yourself? I want the audience to consider that first. And then if you're not, write down the areas that you see these, I guess what I would call these missings, these gaps where you're looking for someone to fill those things, those parts of for you in a relationship, and recognize how you can show up for yourself inside of work that you can do for you, inside of your own personal growth. Really look at yourself before you get into a relationship. And if you're in a relationship, look at what you're expecting from that relationship.
I got that. I got that. Okay, so how can they reach out to you?
So if you'd like to learn more, because obviously we're at a really limited time and there's so much that I share, you can always watch or pick up on Instagram. The handle is the Sammy Group. That's spelled TheSaigroup. SAMI stands for Stress and Anger Management Institute. So it's the SAMI Group, which is the handle. And that's also the website. So if they wanted to learn how to work with me or, you know, figure out what it is that's available through the organization, you can go to thesamigroup.com. It's the same as the Instagram handle. And that's the simplest way to learn more.
Beautiful. So that's gonna be the end of the show, and it's thank you for coming and thank you for sharing this lovely stuff with us. It means a whole lot. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Elijah. It was a pleasure.